Hello, my name is Pablo Reguerin. I serve as the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Achievement and Equity Innovation at UC Santa Cruz. Very proud to be a Latino banana slug. Where are my banana slugs at? All right, okay. I'm also very proud to be a product of the UC system. I'm an Aggie as well. I'm very proud to be an Aggie. Go Aggies. I had the opportunity to complete my doctoral studies at the UC Davis School of Education with Professor Marcela Cuellar, who was a great mentor. But today I have the honor of moderating this panel discussion with a real powerhouse of Chicana, Latinos, staff, faculty, alumni around building coalitions. So I'm going to start by introducing the distinguished panel first. And then we will go ahead and set up the conversation. We'll have some opening questions for our panelists. And then we want to hear from all of you. And so as we begin this conversation, I want you to think about what has been your role in building coalitions. Your homework will be to leave with what you will do to build coalitions amongst Latinos on your campus, beyond the Latino experience. And so I want you to think about that as we get started. So I'm going to start by introducing the panel. I'll start with Neptali Aguilera, who is lovingly known as Tati. He is the co-chair of the UC Chicano Latino Alumni Association. He's an alum of UC Davis, where he graduated in psychology. In 1993, he became a lifetime member of the Cal Aggie Alumni Association. And if you know Tati, you will know that he is an organizing leader. He's been doing this all his life, and he did quite a bit of organizing as a student leader in Mecha and in the Chicano Raza Pre-Law Association at UC Davis. So please welcome Tati. And you guys switched up on me. Alfred's always misbehaving. So I was going to go this way, but I'm going to go to Alfred next. So Alfred Herrera, as you may have heard already, is the Assistant Vice Provost and Director for the Center of Community College Partnerships at UCLA. He has served for 38 years at UCLA in cultivating the transfer pipeline, the talents, assets, and gifts that our transfer students bring to our campuses. He is a recognized leader in this area, both regionally, recently by LA County, but also nationally. Many, many people follow Alfred's model. And he's also one of the authors on a book that was just released called Power to the Transfer, Critical Race Theory and a Transfer Receptive Culture. I'm very proud to call Alfred one of my mentors. He will tell you I've come to UCLA and brought teams to UCLA to follow and shadow the work that he does along with his team because it's very amazing. So thank you, Alfred, for being here. And then to his left is Professor Aida Hurtado, who is the Luis Leal Endowed Chair for Chicano Studies at UC Santa Barbara. She's a social psychologist and a highly accomplished researcher and scholar. And I'm sure you'll see the numerous publications, not only on the Latino experience, but around intersectionality. And I urge you to take a look at her bio on Guidebook to see the much of the thinking and the writing that she's done. She's also, Dr. Hurtado is the recipient of the American Education, she's a recipient of many awards, including some from the American Educational Research Association and the American Association of Hispanics in Higher Education. And I'm proud to announce, as of this morning, Dr. Hurtado is now the Associate Dean for Faculty Equity in Social Sciences at UC Santa Barbara. So always taking on more work. And then I would like to introduce Lupe Gallegos Diaz, the director of the Chicanx Latinx Student Development Center here at UC Berkeley. She is also the co-chair of the UC Chicano Latino Alumni Association. I think Oscar put it really well in saying she's the pillar of the Chicano Latino community here on campus, and I would say throughout the Bay Area. Her leadership was pivotal in putting this event together. She also teaches in Chicano Latino Studies in the School of Social Work. Her leadership extends internationally as a national advisor for the Mexican government, and she also works with many nonprofits, including serving as the vice president of the Chicana Latina Foundation and board chair for the Bay Area Hispanic Institute for Advancement. So please welcome Lupe. As you can see, the wealth of talent on this stage is very impressive. And so let me set up this discussion a little bit around building coalitions. So you saw the data that Dr. Contreras provided, and we know that institutional change, social change, representation of Latinos in marginalized communities does not happen on its own, and that we can't just stand idly by, even within the roles that we have, or whether it's, whether you're in the diversity office or you do diversity work, which I know many of us take on, whether it's in our title or not, whether we even signed up for that. But we know that the combination of external pressure from outside of an institution coupled with the internal pressure can be pivotal. We know that from history. We know that from the pioneering people of color and Latinos who have trailblazed in changing systems, sometimes from the inside, sometimes from the outside, whether you're on the picket line or you're the one writing the policy brief for the chancellor. As faculty, using the voice and the protection of having tenure, et cetera. So we know that building coalitions across Latinx stakeholders and beyond is extremely important in raising visibility, in being heard, in advocacy, and in promoting institutional responsibility around moving the needle across those many areas that are stagnant. The graduate student pipeline, faculty representation, executive leadership positions. If we don't make these changes, as the undergraduate population continues to become more diverse, we will have students who will be coming to the University of California, never having taken a course with someone who shares a cultural experience, with people making decisions, pivotal budget decisions, never having shared or having the funds of knowledge and experience of the Latino culture. So, organizing and coalition building is nothing new to the Latino community. As I mentioned, it's helped open the doors of higher education. Many of us talked about being products of affirmative action and also have had to defend affirmative action and equity initiatives overall. So I would argue that a healthy and vibrant Chicano Latino staff and faculty, alumni, coalitions along with students are key to moving the needle, especially if we're not going to just sit and wait for these things to happen, but we're going to become active in making those changes. We also know from seeing the different efforts on different campuses that the development and health and sustainability of these coalitions, they vary. Some are just by faculty, some are across alumni and faculty. Sometimes alumni are not always involved. They can be really vibrant. Sometimes they just respond to crisis. We know that there's a lot of invisible labor. Many of us take these on top of the 12 jobs that we already have. And so what we wanted to do with this panel and in this session is to, first of all, for those of you that are doing that work already, affirm you all, thank you, and motivate you to continue in that vein. And for those of you that may be newer to that area, to get involved, to again also motivate you in doing that, but also to learn from the lessons, whether it's on your campus or a different campus. If there's something going on at Santa Barbara that we can do at Santa Cruz and vice versa, take advantage of the wealth of knowledge around us. And so again, I want to go back to your homework as we hear from our speakers. Think about what your role is, what you're going to do here, who you need to connect with here to go back to your campus to develop these coalitions. And again, certainly amongst the Latinx community, and I would also urge us to go beyond that. Across marginalized communities involving folks from all different backgrounds. So with that, I'm gonna start with a question for each of the panelists. And then we will, and I'm gonna invite them to expand on some of the responses. And then we'll have time for all of you to ask some questions as well. So I wanna encourage you to please be thinking about the questions that you would like to pose. So the first question is for Tati. As an alumni leader, what have been the most successful strategies in building coalitions across UC Davis or your campus? Similarly, what have been the biggest challenges that you've faced?
Thank you, Pablo, and thank you, the panel members, and thank you, all of you, for the great work that we've done. Earlier, we heard that we have 6 UC campuses. Davis is going to be that 6th, not quite there yet, but we're almost there. But a lot of that work is due, and credit is due to all of you. Recently, I had to make a presentation before an alumni board, and I shared with them that at UC Davis, we are almost there at HSI status. And the response I got was kind of surprising, was, how did we get there? And are you sure about the numbers? And I said, well, yeah, I'm sure about the numbers. And one of the comments was, how did this happen overnight? And I acknowledge it did not happen overnight. It took 50 years of community involvement, alumni, and all the work that you have done and dedicated to helping our students. We talked earlier about education is the key to change. It is. And we're just now starting to see those changes. I just want to make a comment because I heard earlier, and I've heard over the years that I've been at Davis, that for many years our community was told that our students were not ready to enter the UC system. And I think we need to flip that narrative and acknowledge it is the UC system that is not ready for our students, that they have a lot of catching up to hire Latinos and Latinas in leadership, faculty, and support grant positions. And so they are caught really behind the 8 ball. We're really having this summit here today, and we're glad we're having it, but this should have happened years and years ago. So they're playing catch up. When I went to school, 69 through 73, our motto was, where there's a way, there's a will. And I want to share that with the Office of the President and the UC system. What you taught us was that we want accountability and results. And that's what we as alumni are now asking the university. We have plenty of reports, hundreds of recommendations, and it's time now to implement those recommendations. We want accountability and results. That's what we need. Just a couple of other items. At UC Davis, as part of the coalition building, we started at the very top. We meet, as alumni, we meet quarterly with our chancellor, and we're very honest and opinionated about the lack of leadership at UC Davis. Raquel Aldana here is our highest ranking vice chancellor. Dr. Tall is here, Dr. Cortez, but it's not enough. We need better representation and we need it quicker, faster. And how do we get there? As alumni, we are screaming and yelling that we want to be part of that change. We are now participating on search committees. We are reviewing the applications. We are going over the criteria. We want to be part of the interview panel, and we want to see the recommendations before they get selected, not after. And again, where there's a will, there's a way. And what's critical to us now as alumni statewide is that we have to see results. Hilda Ortiz, who was here earlier, and Francesca Vega, who all are elected officials. At the state capitol, we have 29 elected officials. Over half of them are UC graduates. The chair of the Committee on Higher Education, Jose Medina, is a UC Riverside graduate. The Assembly Speaker, Anthony Redone, is a UC graduate. We have all these tools available to us. And as alumni, as part of that coalition building, we must speak out. We must be vocal. We have to tell it like it is. It's taken us so many years to get here. And our concern as alumni is the students are here now. They are overwhelmingly here, present at every major UC campus. Yet we don't have the leadership. We don't have enough faculty. We don't have enough staff. And we don't have enough support programs. So again, it is the University of California that is not ready for us. And it is time for us as alumni to start reaching out to ensure that those things happen.
Thank you. Thank you, Tati. Aida, I want to go to you next. As a faculty leader, what have been the most successful strategies in building coalitions on a campus? And similarly, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced?
I think this is not working. Hello? No. Just do that, okay. Well, I'm very honored to be here and very excited to be here. I think these are conversations that we need to have now almost on a daily basis because the changing demographics are upon us. And I just want to acknowledge a lot of the people that have been doing, I'm having deja vu because I see David Hayes Bautista, who wrote about this in 1987 or something. Richard Duran and I were in the Latino eligibility task force with Jean Garcia. Chris Sierra, I think, left. Silvio Hurtado. It's like we've been in this bubble for 30-some years. And finally, the institution has to do something about it because the predictions that David Hayes Bautista gave us like many years ago are now upon us. Francisco Hernandez, all these people were telling us that the tsunami was coming and nobody paid attention, so here we are. And now we're called upon to solve these issues that the institution should have started fixing when the predictions started many years ago. And I think that the challenge for us, I'm not gonna answer your question. I have other stuff to say. I think that HSI is a proxy for an intersectional change and power. That we're all talking about HSI if it's something we already know and we just have to fit into it. And what the HSI is sort of like a stamp saying that what David Hayes Bautista told us 35 years ago is upon us. That is that we have a dramatically different student population. And let me just point out what we all know, but when it gets taken together, it really is quite astonishing. It is a revolution. All of our students are now of color, right? When we say Hispanic, we mean people that look like me, like you, and a couple güeritos out there. But it means that we are visually different. I'm teaching a class right now of 220 students, and it's the most beautiful thing to see most of them be brown faces, right? So the changing color is a very dramatic thing, especially in a UC system that's an R1 system. The other thing is that we're predominantly working class. So we want to say Latinos and Chicanos, but we really are talking about none of us. I'm in the Department of Chicano and Chicano Studies. There's one person, and she's the youngest, whose parents have a BA. All the rest of us are not only first generation in college, we're first generation in high school. It's like my dad had a third grade education, and same thing with my mom. And so we are talking of this tremendous amount of revolution in terms of how much educational achievement we've accomplished in a couple generations. It is a revolution. The other thing is, which again, I love being in Chicano and Chicano Studies, is most of my students are bilingual. right? So they come and they sit, I have office hours, and they all speak to me in Spanish, in my lengua está toda, because it's like I've been in psychology for many years, and I didn't practice my formal Spanish, and they can speak it better than I can. And it's just an amazing asset that these kids have that is going to modify all our professions. And we don't acknowledge that openly, right? The other thing is that many of them have, many of us, me, we cross institutions. I'm a full professor in the UC system, and the only year I did not publish a single thing was the year that my brother got out of prison, right? Because I was gonna be damned if he was gonna go back to prison. And so the whole year I dedicated to helping him transition, go back to school, got his BA at UC with the banana slugs because it's the most open campus that I've ever been in. Got his MSW at San Jose State, and now is a social worker with foster kids less than a mile from here, right? I don't know a single full professor in psychology that has to deal with that as you're trying to deal with other things as a professor, and I'm not unique. We just hired 2 new assistant professors in Chicano and Chicano studies. They both have brothers in the system, right? So we have to be very aware that we are dealing with very different kinds of families. We are dealing with very different kinds of responsibilities, and that the institution, it has to really modify itself, like what you pointed out, that we cannot accommodate to a university where the motto was, we will build it and they will come. No, now we are gonna have to rethink how we do education as a whole, including how we collaborate with staff as faculty, how we collaborate with other people of color so that since we're the majority now, Latinos, we cannot ignore our African-American colleagues and students. We cannot ignore our Asian-American, colleagues and students. We cannot ignore the feminist studies programs that are in collaboration and in coalition with us. So it is really an intersectional, I hate to be academic about this, but it's really an intersectional change and power. And so that coalitions are not only with staff, but they're with all different segments, that our life as a siloed community as faculty is no longer viable. If we're gonna succeed with these students, we're all gonna have to be creative and step outside of the silos that are naturally created in academia, especially in R1 institutions. So that's all I have to say.
Gracias, Aida. Okay, I'm gonna go to Alfred. Whose job is it to organize and build coalitions at UC campuses? Do you wait for a charge letter? Should it be recognized officially? Or should it be more grassroots? Do we need the chancellors to tell us? Should it be more from, as mentioned, the grassroots? What are the critical elements to consider when building a campus coalition?
I'm going to take Aida's stand, and I'm not going to answer your question.
Sorry.
I'm going to ask people how they're doing. So, in one word, it's everyone's.
Yeah.
It really is a responsibility of not one person or one office, but everybody there. So, dating myself, in the early 80s at UCLA, when I was a young and vibrant and so forth, I was part of a group of people, Chicano Latinos, who wanted to do something to organize a group of workers to start a Latino staff association. So in about 82, I think it was, Arturo Olivas was the original founder of our UCLA Latino Alumni, our Latino Staff and Faculty Association. So Arturo and I and a few other people got together and started talking about how we needed to meet to really just come together to talk about the common challenges that we face as young staff on our campus. And it has gone all the way up and all the way down and so on. It has been various different kinds of organizations throughout the many years. It is sustained, and I'm happy to introduce Tony Sandoval somewhere over here. There he is over there, who is our current president of the the Latino Staff and Faculty Association. And it is being revitalized under his leadership this year because it's an important element to it. How many faculty are there in the house? Can you raise your hand? Okay, so that's one of our challenges right there. We need more faculty here, okay? The other side of that is, how many of you faculty, you don't have to raise your hand on this one, how many of you faculty are involved in any organization, Latino staff faculty or Latino faculty association at your campus? Just think about that for a minute. So at UCLA, I'm gonna call us out. At UCLA, we have a Latino staff faculty association, and it is comprised primarily of staff. There are a lot of people on our campus that get together and do a lot of things. We have a few faculty who come. One of them is one of my heroes, sitting right over there, David Hayes Bautista, who has consistently over the years been a regular member of this organization. There are a few other faculty on campus, but for the most part, we don't get the participation of the faculty. I'm not going to go into how, why, what, so forth. The reality is, it's just we need to have that. It needs to be a group of individuals on both sides, the faculty side and the staff and administrator side, that get together. So I call out to all of you who are faculty, really engage yourself in these efforts to really do that, because when our staff, particularly our young staff, get together and they see you at this or in this organization as a leader, it helps motivate them to really continue on. So think about the impact you could have, as we've been talking about all morning, the leadership that you have just because of who you are and what you represent and what your accomplishments have already been, how important that is to young people in our area. So the other thing I want to mention is some of the elements that are really important, and it's passion. I mean, how many of us are not passionate about what we do? Right? You wouldn't be here if you weren't passionate and you didn't care. And it's important for us to take that passion and to build leaders. It's important to have leaders and not a leader. It cannot fall on one person to do this. It has to be a collective. It's important to have a lot of people who are not leaders but who want to work, because not everybody wants to lead. People really want to help push this initiative. It's important to have a common goal. It's important to have a vision. It's important to have collaborations across campus. So it's not just a Latino issue. When at the last posada that we had, there were people from all across campus. And they weren't just Latinos. They were all different community members from our campus. And that's how we build our strength. It's connecting to the community and making sure the community is broad enough and diverse enough to include important people. And one of the biggest things that comes across, I know it's my time as he's walking up, one of the biggest things I think that we need to think about, and as you're doing this, is one, and this always comes up, is it a social organization? Is it a political organization? Is it a professional development organization? And there are all different ways that we go on that. Some people are like, let's just get together and, kind of talk through the bitch sessions and all of that. And that's important. But there are others that say we really want to help build these young people in professions. It needs to be all three. If we are a group of Latinos together, it is social, without a doubt. It is always political, because within our own community, we can't even agree. So it's political, and it's professional, because we have strong leaders that are part of this who are helping build the next generation. So I say to you, find your passion in your organizations, find your leaders, get together. If you want to start it as a social, start it as a social, but do something together as faculty, staff, and administrators to build a strong network on your campus.
Thank you, Alfred. Okay, Lupe, I'm going to read the question, but you take it where you want because everyone has done such a nice job. It really was the questions that got this going. Lupe, as a seasoned leader...
I'm actually going to answer the question.
Sorry? Oh, no, it's okay. As a seasoned leader and someone who's worked on your campus that has moved and developed coalition building, what directions, initiatives do you think organizers should be planning as we move forward? What are the future directions that maybe we haven't done in the past? And you know, in higher education, we say many of the tools in our toolbox from the past and even that we use now aren't sufficient for tackling the issues that we're of the future. And so maybe you can enlighten us a little bit on
thank
what
you.
strategies, Lupe.
Gracias, and thank you for asking me to be part of also this panel. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about strategic planning, because I think you need to be very strategic and thoughtful in the way you're building coalitions. So the way I look at the world or frame the world is within, across, and outside. So I look at it, what am I doing on campus, across campus, and outside campus? And those concentric circles are constantly moving, and that's how then I start my framing of the work I do, without forgetting that my constituencies are four particular to 5 constituencies. Students, and I divide students from undergrad and grad, because it's really, really important to do that. I also look at staff, and I know there's differences in staff and staff managers, but you know, those of us who are service spacing and touching. The other one I think about is our faculty, because faculty have huge demands and the needs that they have and the things we would want from them. And the other one is the outside, the communities we are supposed to serve. And so I'm very, very strategic. So on our campus, I'm going to give you 3 examples of real specific things that cross all those areas. So on our campus, we have what's called La Colectiva. And we started this right after Dr. Larry Trujillo had been here, who's one of my mentors, who I stepped in as a grad student, who I actually, aside from being a great DJ and scholar, he collected tons of also photos, which was really important. But more than anything, he actually worked with students to develop where they taught the classes, but he was always in the background. So we were femtoring and mentoring courses that the students developed, and I got to actually be there with him in this creation. So I learned from him when I stepped into my position. So this colectiva invites every single brown space and place on campus at least 3 times a semester. What we have found over the years is that we don't even know who we are on our own campuses. So this started as a social, and so now what we do is 3 times a semester, everybody talks about what they're doing in their space, where can we collaborate, and how can we support each other. That's the whole agenda for La Colectiva, or what the students call their brown spaces across the campus. So that's real strategic, because it also helps me, because I can't go to every single 15 to 20 spaces on campus. So this is called to also organize myself to get information and filter information to all the newsletters. We're also being very strategic about our newsletters. People who are running the newsletters get together and they're sharing information, so we don't also have everybody getting the same thing over and over from 10 different newsletters on campus. But there's cross-sectionalities about their own particular constituencies' needs. So that's been very important. The other thing we also have been doing in the Colectiva is, one of the things we were able to buy is an actual statue, a bust of the Cesar Chavez in our Student Learning Center that the students changed the name with. So we can actually do concrete things collectively that we couldn't do separately because we don't have enough funds to do things. So that was really important. The other thing I want to talk about, which was talked about earlier, is graduate students. This year, what we've decided, actually my cuñado, who's costarricense, works in the College of Natural Resources, and he came to me one day when I was working over at the Latino Research Center and said, Lupe, I have no Latino students in my classes teaching over there. I need you to help me recruit students. So every semester here, we're putting out flyers. We need Latino students to be involved with environmental issues. So what ended up happening from that is we started a conversation with the College of Natural Resources. And I really like what Hilda Solis said earlier, is about coalescence. It's really coalition building. We found allies in the colleges we didn't expect to find. And this is really important for a lot of you. There's people we don't even know about that we just reach out, particularly in those colleges in STEM, who really want to maybe work with us, but they don't know that yet. So it's really, really important. So we started an initiative that you'll all hear about, Latinos in the Environment. We started it here, but now it's going to go UC-wide this fall. And so what we're doing is, it's based for grad students actually coming together because they're yearning to know each other, the few that there are in the STEM fields. And they want to build community, but more than that, we're exposing them to other opportunities across the campus. That usually doesn't happen. And the first meeting was in Casa California in Mexico City last year. So we actually got funded by actually the UC system to make that happen. So some of you actually are part of also some of those other initiatives on the campus with the US Mexico initiatives, who are actually giving us some of those funding, and particularly UC Mexis, I want to give a big shout out to them. So yes, thank you. And the other one I'm going to end with, as my colleague over there as a co-chair to the Alumni Association for the 10, we're calling it the 10-pack. The 10 Chicano Latino Alumni Associations are coming together. Because as we all know, in numbers, we're stronger. And our voices are more collective. We're babies. We just started 2 years ago. So, but we invite all of you to join us. And so how are we building alliances across our alum? We have an event on our campus called SWAG, Sharing Wisdom Across Generations. So you can all borrow it. We can have it across the systems. We invite alumni once a year. They all come and they talk on panels around their areas of profession, business, STEM, wherever it is, literature, higher ed. And students come and listen to them, not only how they made it on their campuses, but how did they transition to the work world, or to grad school, or professional school. So I invite you to share that with us. And now I know Taddy and I are on a mission as alum and also part of the UC system to transform and change the institution. Thank you.
Okay, so I know you all have been thinking about some questions, not statements or speeches, but questions. But we do have an opportunity now to hear, to leverage the wisdom here on the stage and open it up to the audience. I know you all have been listening. And let me see, can we have a mic down there? Maybe.
Hello, hello.
Raise your hands. Hi, I think I saw here. Josefina.
Thank you for your wisdom, because collectively there's literally over 100 years of wisdom there. So muchísimas gracias to our elder minds. I know you mentioned, Lupe, about the participation of the Chicano Latino alumni associations. So my question is, how do we leverage and infiltrate the general alumni associations, because that's where the feria is at? So that's my question.
I think, yeah, here's
Does this work?
Yep, they can turn it on.
Okay, thank you. Just initially, when we first started the statewide Chicano Latino Alumni Association, I called the office of the president and asked, how many Latinos serve on formal alumni boards? And they couldn't give me an answer. So I started calling, and I found out there are about approximately 40 plus Latinos who sit on formal alumni boards. I want to do a shout out to UC Riverside, to UCLA, to UC Santa Barbara, to UC Santa Cruz, all of which have 5 or more on the formal alumni boards. But how did we get there? It is very selective. And I, as a Latino board member to the UC Davis Alumni Board, we have to make recommendations of Latinos to serve on that board. There are over 200,000 Latino alumni. But not only alumni boards, we also have to advocate for Latinos and Latinas on the UC foundations that are the money portion. And many people don't even know about those foundations. Fortunately, at UC Davis, we have currently 2 Latinos that serve on the foundation. We're hoping to get a 3rd fairly soon. So we must push the envelope. And just one last thing I want to make a comment on is in the past, they would say they would want to know to get on the alumni board, how much did you donate? I kind of move that around and say, you know, many of our folks have been ambassadors for each of our campuses. We work in the community, and you need to translate that into dollars, and that's why they deserve to be on the alumni board.
No, and I think it's also very important to talk that we were also very strategic, Berkeley specifically, because we were facing challenges within, not that they wouldn't work with us, but our needs were different and we were asking for different things that they couldn't actually provide. The UC Chicano Latino, the UC Berkeley Chicano Latino Alumni Association actually became its own 501c3. So what did that do for us? So that means that we can actually go after other funding where our hands are not tied. So we're still affiliated because they're still working with us, but now we're independent. So doing that has actually helped us, for example, at Berkeley, apply for City of Berkeley funds to help plan the La Placita event, which is Berkeley citywide. And the campus is one of those partners. So there's also strategic things we did, and we are currently the fiscal agent to the Collective 10. Because the question is, do we really want to start another 501c3 at this point? But we have similar missions, so we're thinking that that might stay for a while.
I want to mention one more thing. Currently, we have over 800 plus Latino and Latinas that serve on school boards. Many are UC graduates. Also, we have many UC graduates who serve as leaders in statewide Latino organizations, many of which I recently found out that the University of California doesn't even know. They're not familiar with CAVE, California Association of Bilingual Education, one of the largest Latino organization that has for years been working with our students at the very young age to bring them and advocate for higher education. But yet, the Office of the President and many of our universities have never heard of them. The American GI Forum, one of the oldest organizations that support veterans. And many of those veterans are now coming back to the UC. So as much as we like to advocate, it is the university that has to do its work. They don't know our community, so they need us to teach them. But they got to hire us and they have to promote us.
Anyone else want to add for your next question? Anyone else want to add for this one? No, okay. I think Alejandra, would you read? Oh, okay, then we have a question over here, Juan, and then one in the back, and please, okay, back, and then we'll come back over here.
Is it working? Yeah.
Yes.
So bear with me. It's going to take me less than 2 minutes to make this comment and a question. And I think it's sort of the deconstructive version of the theme of coalition. You've heard a lot of data about where the system stands in relation to Latinos. It happens, though, that there is one thing that collective data is hiding, and that the three most selective, I would call them exclusionary campuses in the system, are actually not integrated at all. Starting with our host, UCB, where only 13.5% of undergraduate students are Latinx. 13.5. Think about this data to assess that level of exclusion. 42% of all UC applicants who are A through G compliant and have the right GPA, 42% of them are Latinx. And Berkeley has 13.5%. And San Diego has 16.5%. And UCLA has 19%. I'm happy to work in coalitions, but it is fundamental that those three campuses, because of the role they play in the hierarchy, because they are perceived by the enemies of diversification and the integration of the California system as defending the liberal ideology of meritocracy, it is so crucial that they become more Hispanic and respond to not just the demographic pressure, the social justice pressure that is behind the population achievement that Latinos have enacted in the last 30 years or so. So I'm bringing that because I think once we're able to change the number of those 3 campuses in this crucial respect, we will be collectively in a much better coalitional position to enact change.
Alfred?
I just want to remind people, and this is nothing about what you said, Juan, but I want to remind people that when we talk about the importance of increasing access, that we include transfer students, because most of the time what we hear about percentages in A through G and all of that is focused on the freshmen. But there's a huge population of transfer students that can change the dynamics of our institution. So I would encourage you to learn more about that if you're not familiar, and to, whenever you make comments about that, to always remember transfer students matter. Thank you.
I would also want to include that as some of our campuses are dealing with HSI, one of the things that we're also facing at UC Berkeley is that when I know there's a particular parameter around HSI, and we've been talking about on our campus about looking outside the box, because grad students are not included in that part of that equation. To think of our solutions in a broader perspective and what will fit with that, but our bigger vision of transition and change is broader than that. And I think that's really, really important, because it's like a set thing, and we're like, what can be better to do what you're saying, Juan, to change those numbers? The other thing I wanted to say too is that we can't forget also the alliances that we have across national organizations. And so I want to just give an example, because Aida also didn't say that next year she will become the president or chair to the Mujeres Activas en Letras y Cambio Social, which is one of our highest ranking organizations where we see Latinas going through. And it's important I say that because I'm also involved with the Chicano Latina Foundation, is that we're building alliances now between going after funding like MALCs with the Chicano Latina Foundation and our campuses. And that's really important that we actually do those kind of alliances, because it really can transform when we have the campuses and the outside communities. Here, 2 big players, MALCs and Chicano Latina Foundation. We're going to go after money with the Lumina Foundation. We're talking about Latina leadership. And what does that look like for the future? And so I just want to also Pablo talked about what are the new future directions. Bringing back the intersegmental convocation is huge. It's a political move to address these numbers, the one that you're talking about. But not only that, it also includes the private sector, which is really, really important. And I think it includes also all our politicians. It all has to happen together. So that's really, really important that we continue to think about the future. And I actually would like to see a leadership seminar just for Chicanas and Latinas. What would that look like?
Pablo.
Okay, go ahead, Francis, up next, just to respond, and then we'll come to Tati, and then we'll go to our next question. Yes.
It's so funny. Just listening to describe the Chicano Latina Foundation and MALCs, I don't even think about the way that I'm related to those organizations. And I think that one of the things that comes to mind is that our power is really relational. Right? That it's not asset-based, because none of us are rich yet, or I don't know if we ever will be, but what we have are relationships. And so when I came up for review, I had gotten this award from the Chicano Latina Foundation, and that was like big deal on my review, right? I had all the other academic stuff, but to them, the fact that this organization, which was dedicated to training Chicanas undergraduate leaders, enhanced the work that I do on feminism in ways that the institution itself could not do. And then my being chair-elect of MALCs and not of APA or any mainstream organization, really means a lot more because it dovetails into the work that we do and to the HSI status. And so that we need to think more about building our networks and enhancing the relationships we have rather than the training that many assistant professors are getting right now, which is to really mainline them into organizations and to try to succeed within the mainstream, which is not going to happen. And if they do, they're going to be tokens because there's so few of us in those mainstream organizations. And in the meantime, you can get all these other kinds of benefits and relationships and change by enhancing our own networks. And so I just thought, oh, there was a method to my madness, and it paid off. But I think that we need to be more mindful that we do have this incredible amount of resources because of that relation.
Thank you. Francis, if we could get the purple microphone on, please.
Okay. Okay, great. This is just a point of clarification. UC San Diego undergraduates are actually 20%, but even though, I mean, we're still working on it, but the point is that I think that on each of our campuses, we have to think about the infrastructures we have, and it's not just with enrolling our students. For us, it's not, and our campus, we're actively working on this with our task force and our work group. It's not only about the numerics, and that's why we have this task force and this work group, and we've had this whole process was because we really want to think about how can we be strategic about paying attention to the experience of our students, about paying attention to setting these students up to thrive. And I think those are the bigger questions. So Berkeley, we can get the students here, but what kind of experience will they have when all the faculty, all the Latinx faculty are retiring or they're non-existent, when the numbers look worse than when I was an undergrad? And so I think these are the critical questions. That 4% being a stagnant line is just simply not good enough. If we get the faculty, the graduate students will come. If we get the faculty, the undergraduate students will come. They will actually be choosing the UCs over CSU. And right now it's the reverse. They're choosing those that are A through G compliant, those that are A through G, our highest achievers, are choosing other systems. They're choosing other pathways. And that's not to say those aren't valid pathways, but we need to make the UC the choice and of destination. We need to make it the destination for Latinx students. So.
Thank you, Francis. And that's what I would call being Latinx responsive. There's a question over here. What color microphone is that?
Green.
We need the green microphone on, please.
Hi. So thank you for allowing me to ask a question. My name is Edward Flores. I'm at University of California, Merced. So the UC system is the largest employer in the state of California. And there's many Latinos that work in the UC system in low-wage jobs or even in contracted positions, doing similar work to UC employees, but just getting paid less. And there's a huge disparity in how much folks get paid. I, as a professor, get paid a lot more than someone who's changing light bulbs and plunging toilets. And some of these positions we're talking about, like vice chancellor or whatever, not to knock it or anything, but folks are getting paid like $200,000 a year. So there's a huge disparity in the pay. And so, I get a little concerned, because I think about the fact that when I'm from California and a lot of my peers had to drop out of school to pay rent. And something like 1 out of every 3 families in America has nothing in savings and wouldn't know what to do with like a $1,000 emergency. And so, these are issues that are on the forefront of my mind. And I just wonder if we're talking about having a faculty association separate from a staff association, what does the future of building support and serving the different constituencies in the UC system, what does that look like?
Thank you.
I was going to mention at UC Davis, as part of the Chicano Latino Alumni Association, we specifically asked for the representation of Latinos working at UC Davis, and right away we were told that's not the information that we want to share. And we told them right back, that's public information, we want to see it and we want to call it out. We want to know where our Latinos stand, where they're represented, so that we can advocate for them. There's nothing wrong with saying that you're underrepresented, which you are, in Latinos at all levels, and most of the Latinos that work in the UC system are in the lower end instead of the higher end, and we want to call that out. We want you to set goals that are important to us, and when you talk about diversity, it's not just diversity about our students, it's about the students, the staff, and the faculty. And I just want to say one last thing. I think it's real critical at this summit that we acknowledge the role that alumni have played in the UC system. We do not have a conflict with raising the voice of the Latino community. And I think sometimes the alumni portion of it is left out of involvement and engagement at conferences like that. So that I hope that in the future you will have a more robust engagement of UC alumni, especially UC alumni who are community leaders in the corporate, business, health, and community.
Just actually want to acknowledge what you said, because I know with the custodial and the service staff, those are some of the bigger issues regarding what are we doing around living wages, which is real in the Bay Area, particularly about paying bills day to day. Particularly around right now, I know John Perez will be talking about it. I don't know, he might mention it, but he's been negotiating with the unions, which is a whole other about representation for our workers. But you bring up really, really good questions regarding that our administrations on each campus will have to deal with in trying to bring equity to these positions instead of separating us, but actually really trying to figure out how to have some kind of equality and actually more money in particular areas of work. So I just want to really acknowledge that. So
I want to add something, and it's a different, on a different note, and it's beyond the living wage and all of that. And it's something that, I don't know, maybe 12 years or so, I wrote a proposal, and it was called UCLA Cares. For me, I worked in admissions for many, many years, and the people who came in to clean the offices, the people who were outside sweeping up, doing everything, all of the service workers were spending their entire lives at the university. And I kept, as some of them came to know us, they were always asking us questions about what we do. And when they found out that we were recruiters and that we were helping kids get into college, they were always asking questions about, I want to know about my mijo, how I can get da. So I wrote a proposal thinking that we should be doing something to help these people who are helping us be a thriving university. So I wrote a proposal called UCLA Cares, where we decided to have a program for all of the service workers to bring their children to learn about the university, because I wonder how many of them actually really know what the university is or does. Some of them do, but many of them don't. They come in, they do their job, and they go back. So, we wanted to try to help them. Well, it turned into a little bigger than that, because we had to have conversations with the union, because there are different shifts. So we wanted to get as many people as possible. So we were able to build a program that started at the end of the morning of the first shift before the second shift, and the union allowed us to have them come in an hour early or go spend an hour late and so on. And so we built this thing, but rather than just focus on their children, because we had a kind of a college fair to help them understand, we also had resume writing. We also had opportunities for them to talk to career people, because we wanted that some of them may have wanted to go back to school or do something. So it went on for a couple of years at UCLA, and it was really exciting, and then it died out. So I would challenge you, each of you, to think about all of those people who do everything to make our lives easier. And with that, I want to thank all of the workers that are here who helped us, because I forgot to do that this morning. But these are people who are our mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and so forth. So I want you to think about all of those people And what can we do individually and collectively for all of them? Most of those people are Black or brown. Most of those workers. So we should take the time out of our day to make sure that we ask the questions. I've had 10 of children of different workers on our campus involved in our summer programs. And they tell the other one and the other one. So whenever they see us, they come into our offices and ask about our programs. That's what our job should be about, making sure that the people who help us succeed have an opportunity to have their own children succeed.
Thank you. And then we're going to go to another question here.
Before I forget, I wanted to acknowledge Blas Guerrero, who played a critical role in having UC Davis reach HSI almost there. He's been recruiting, I think, a lot of Latinos away from a lot of the other campuses. And I want to thank him for the greatest job that he's done statewide.
Okay, we have a question here. If we could get the purple mic back on, please.
Hi, my name is Virginia Rivera, and I'm from UC Santa Cruz. And Tati, this question is for you. You talked about advocating to be a part of search committees, but you also have mentioned the search firms. And I want everybody here to hear what you have to say when it does come to search firms, because I know all of our campuses use them, and how you're questioning who's being used, et cetera.
Right.
Thank you.
As part of the board of directors for the UC Davis Alumni Board, I've been asked to participate in various search committees on campus. And what I find out really kind of surprised me, that many of the firms that they use are from back east. And in the short time that I've had the opportunity to sit down with them, I asked them what experience do they have in specifically recruiting Latinos and people of color, and specifically in California, because so many of the recruitment efforts are here in California. And somehow we end up, and I know there's a lot of qualified folks, but we end up with folks from back east in California. And I find that so ironic when the University of California says we're so prestigious, we're ranked top 10, but yet we keep hiring people not from the UC system. And I think that's a major problem. We need to hire Latinos and people of color who know the UC system, who know our population, not people who are not familiar. That isn't to say they can't learn it, but gosh, we have an incredible number of talented folks here. And so I'm hoping that that will change soon and quickly by our participation on those search committees and us advocating and being involved from start to finish in those search committees.
Okay, we're going to give, unfortunately, we are at time, but we will, right after this session is a networking session, so people can come up and speak with the panelists directly. We are going to just have concluding brief remarks from our panelists, and then we will go into the networking time. So you can start planning the staff and faculty and alumni associations that we'll be taking back to our campus. Maybe we can start on this side and come down, Lupe. Can I get the blue mic on, please? Okay, it's on. It should be on.
Oh, now it's on. If there were two words I think I would really walk away with, is that you could lead and build from any position you're in. That's the first one. The second one, I really want to say, and reminded me of a little story, just really quick. My husband has been a custodian for now 35 years. He's retiring this year. And the way that he has acknowledged, I really like this concept of the Cariño Index for each campus. He has worked for now 5 chancellors as a custodian. He said that the chancellor that was the most affirming and acknowledging to him when he went to pick up his garbage in his office was Chancellor 10. Chancellor Tien actually acknowledged him when he came in and when he was picking up his garbage and walking out the door. Everybody else didn't say a word to him. And so I just want you to think about who, like Alfred said, who is working for us and what is our role as people who are very privileged on a campus that we're also making accessible to our future communities. Thank you.
Aida?
That's a beautiful story, and it reminds me when I moved over. I know I sound like I'm head over heels with my department, but I am. Every Christmas we give a special present to our the person that cleans our offices, and he now is very empowered. He comes into our offices and he tells about his kids, and he's part of our entire. I said, next thing we know, we're going to be in a faculty meeting with him, But I think it can become part of our way that we deal with the institution. I just want to remind us that given the outline that we've been hearing about the students that constitute an HSI now, and that eventually, whether it's in the lead institution or not, they're going to have to deal with the changing numbers anyway, that we are going to be highly dependent on student affairs because we are dealing with students that do not know how to navigate the institution. And so that the collaboration between faculty and student affairs is going to have to be built, and it's going to have to be very intense because we're going to be dependent on student affairs to help those kids navigate the institution. And so that for us not to reach out to student affairs means that we are not doing our part as faculty to facilitate that adjustment to an institution that is, for the most part, they do not understand, and that somebody did that for us, otherwise we would not be faculty. So I just want to highlight that fact.
Gracias. Alfred?
Two words that I'm thinking of, one of them is privilege. So many of us come from first-generation backgrounds. We've fought our way to wherever it is we are. We've had the opportunity to really do what we can to help. But we need to take that privilege and turn it into responsibility, because each one of us can change the lives of any student, any staff, any faculty, anyone around you. As Lupe said, you don't have to be the top person to make the change. You just have to be committed to it. It is your responsibility to leave this summit, to remind yourself how important it is, to remember how you got where you got, who helped you, who was responsible for you being where you are, and turn that around to give to the community. One of the things that we advocate in our summer programs about social justice is giving back to the community. It is really important for you to learn what you need to learn, but to go back and share it with others. Because if we don't, we know where we're going.
I just want to mention that we need to be much more vocal. We need to be a little mad. And we even need to scream out. At a recent meeting that we had in Mexico City at Casa California, I want to repeat what our chair of the UC region said to us as alumni. He said, it's a disgrace, it's embarrassing that we do not, at this point in time, have a Latino chancellor. We only have one more opportunity, and that will be at UC Merced, where there's 60% of the population is Latino. So I hope that you will go away today and tomorrow with a kind of a little bit of anger and angst to want to make a big difference and to be more vocal, because that's our voice. We are representing our parents, our community, and our children. And we have to speak out because no one else is going to do it for us. Thank you.
Okay. And I have one closing comment myself. So remember the homework. We're going to figure out what we can do back at our campuses. I especially, though, want to encourage and maybe in a respectfully call out those of us that are at the highest levels. And we know we have work to do, as Francis pointed out, on being the senior management group, the vice chancellors and the vice provosts. But we do have quite a number of Latinos in the associate vice chancellor, assistant vice chancellor, that one level below. I'm saying this to myself. For a long time, I know I would say like, well, that's not really my job, or I have my 12 other jobs. if I start using my budget for a Chicano Latino or Staff and Faculty Association, then people are going to think that I have to keep paying for it. I used to think that way. Last year, I just said, we're going to do this. We're not asking for permission. I've got some budget. I have some discretionary money. We're going to use it. We brought up 25 people last year. We didn't know where the money was going to come from. I said, just sign up. We'll figure it out. And it all eventually did work out. But what I do want to encourage, particularly those higher-ranking Latinx staff, the faculty who have tenure, we're going to give the assistant professors a pass until they get tenure. And then, to really double down on being the one to stand up, being the one to be the convener, call the meetings and get some of these projects going. So, because if not us, who is then going to do it? So with that, we're going to close this session, and we have a networking session, and then we'll be coming back to hear from the chair of the UC Regents, a Latino, John Perez, that we're very proud to have at the table as a UC Regent. So get your networking done, and we'll continue this great conference. Thank you.